When we think about plagues, we normally think about the Black Death or the Antonine Plague. However, there was another plague that most people had never heard about, and it's called the Plague of Justinian. This plague is one of the reasons why the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, collapsed because it killed half of the population. It devastated the Eastern Roman military, which already had a hard time defending against the Persians and other nomadic tribes. The plague not only helped to usher in the end of antiquity, but it also helped to usher in the Islamic Golden Age, and it did all of that before the Black Death even happened. So let's talk about what the Plague of Justinian was, how it fits into the history of plagues, and how its legacy can still be seen today. The Plague of Justinian was caused by the same bacteria that caused the Black Death, Yersinia pestis. But unlike the Black Death, it started in the Middle East and spread west through North Africa and then up into Europe. Its first recorded appearance was in 541 AD. During this time, Emperor Justinian I was trying to reconquer the Western Roman Empire from the Ostrogoths. He sent his general Belisarius to do this. Belisarius had some success, but he soon had to stop his campaigns because he got sick with the plague. We don't know exactly where he contracted it, but the consensus is that it was in Egypt. While Belisarius was recovering from the plague, the Gothic king Theodoric the Great died and his son Totila took over. And while Belisarius was gone, the Goths pushed deep into Italy. By 542, the plague had made its way to Constantinople, and it was absolutely devastating. One historian wrote that 5,000 to 10,000 people were dying every day. Entire families were being wiped out, and those who survived the disease often wished they had died because they were horribly disfigured. Even though Constantinople was one of the largest cities in the world, it didn't have enough manpower to handle such a high death toll. Corpses piled up in the streets, and when the citizens tried to bury them, they found that the cemeteries were already full. It's estimated that between 30 and 50% of the population of Constantinople died from the plague. Justinian had sent most of his army to conquer Italy, so he didn't have anyone to defend his capital. He asked Belisarius to come home, but Belisarius said he couldn't leave Italy because Totila was still a threat. So Justinian turned to the Goths for help. He offered them a deal. If they helped him defeat the plague, then he would allow them to keep the lands they had conquered in Italy. The Goths agreed, and together they were able to get the plague under control. But by this point, half of the population of the Eastern Roman Empire was gone. The army was demoralized, the treasury was depleted, and the economy was in sharp decline. To make things worse, the plague would come back in waves for the next 200 years. The worst of these outbreaks occurred in 565 and 749. They were as bad as the initial outbreak, but they weakened the empire even more. And by the time the plague finally stopped coming back in waves, the empire had been greatly weakened and was ripe for the taking. In 1054, the Bishop of Rome and the Patriarch of Constantinople excommunicated each other. This led to the official split between the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church. Then in 1204, the Fourth Crusade sacked Constantinople. After that, the Eastern Roman Empire would never really be the same. And by 1453, it had been conquered by the Ottomans and ceased to exist. Now, obviously, the Eastern Roman Empire was ultimately responsible for its own downfall. But if it hadn't been for the plague of Justinian, it might have been able to defend itself against the threats that it faced. That's because the plague killed approximately 50 million people, which was roughly half of the population of the Eastern Roman Empire. This made it the deadliest plague in history until the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic isn't anywhere near as bad as the plague of Justinian, at least not yet. But it has shown us how quickly things can go wrong. And a lot of people are worried about the possibility of another bubonic plague pandemic. Now, it's unlikely that this would happen since we now have antibiotics to treat it. But just last year, there were 2 cases of someone getting the plague in the United States. Both of them recovered, but it shows that the plague is still out there and could theoretically start spreading around the world again. The reason why I bring this up is because the fear of disease is a major theme in modern apocalypse fiction. A lot of post-apocalyptic stories use disease to kill off characters or entire communities. And usually it's some kind of virus that there's no cure for. Sometimes it's a disease that comes from exposure to nuclear radiation, like in the Fallout series. Other times it's a biological weapon, like in the Station 11 TV show. And sometimes it's an unknown pathogen, like in the book and movie The Road. Disease is used as a plot device in a lot of modern dystopias too. For example, in the Hunger Games series, the Capitol uses the Mutts, which are basically rabbit dogs, to try and stop Katniss and Peeta from winning the 74th Hunger Games. And in Divergent, Triss gets sick with a deadly virus that the Erudite want to use to kill off all the factionless people. Disease is such a popular plot device in dystopian fiction because it plays on one of humanity's greatest fears, the fear of the unknown. People have always feared disease because it can spread quickly, and often there is nothing that can be done to stop it. Even today, people are still afraid of diseases like HIV, AIDS, Ebola, and COVID-19 because they don't know how to prevent them from spreading. And that fear of the unknown is what makes disease such a great plot device in dystopian fiction. Disease is also a great plot device because it can be used to control people. Throughout history, people have been quarantined and isolated because they had a contagious disease. And sometimes they were blamed for the disease. For example, during the Black Death pandemic, Jews were often blamed for the plague and persecuted for it. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Asian Americans were blamed for the disease and faced a lot of hate and violence because of it. When people are afraid of something, they often look for someone to blame. And if they can't find anyone to blame, they'll just blame an entire group of people. Disease can also be used as a plot device to show how desperate people are. When people are starving or freezing to death, they're not going to be too worried about getting a contagious disease. They're just going to do whatever they need to do to survive. And that desperation can lead to some really interesting character moments in dystopian fiction. If you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button. Now, let's move on to the final part of this video. Another reason why disease is such a great plot device in dystopian fiction is because it can be used to show how far society has fallen. In a dystopia, the world is usually much harsher and more unforgiving than it is in our world. There are usually widespread poverty, hunger, and violence. And disease is just another thing that people have to deal with. It is a way of showing how far society has fallen when there are so many people who are suffering. Now, I want you guys to think of your favorite post-apocalyptic story and ask yourself, what role does disease play in that story? How is it used as a plot device? What does it say about the world that the story is set in? I think that if you take the time to think about it, you'll realize that disease is an important part of what makes that story so great. The reason why I love post-apocalyptic and dystopian fiction is because it makes me think about the world in new ways. It challenges my assumptions and makes me consider different points of view. And one of the ways that these stories challenge my assumptions is by making me think about disease in a new way. These stories remind me that disease is something that we should always be aware of. It is something that we should be prepared for because it can strike at any time and it can be devastating. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos. Thank you guys for watching this video.